Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. Telephone number to call in if you'd like to call us and be on the air is 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up and running, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. Gwyneth was trying to be in touch with us today for the broadcast, but she's having some difficulty with her phone. We're not sure what's going on. All lines are busy between Guineith and us in Minnesota. So here we go. I've decided that I'm going to take a stab at writing a book. And I mentioned this a couple times. And I thought what I could do is share with you some of my thoughts about this book. I'd like it to be a book on the way I do things, because I do things differently. Not to be contrary, not to be obstinate, but I think I found different twists, different ways of doing things that work better for me, that are more frugal, more cost-effective, have greater value to me the way I do things. So why don't we start with one thing, like buying a car. I don't buy new cars. I don't buy new cars because there are a couple reasons why I don't buy new cars. One reason is that I really don't know if I could handle the first dent, the first ding. Not from me, but parking in a parking lot and having some careless person leave that shopping cart at the upper end of the parking lot, uphill, and have that cart run downhill and slam into the side of my car and just scratch it and ding it and dent it. I don't think I'd like to have that happen. And then you have the people who don't know how to get out of the cars without slamming their car door into your car door. When you're parked all in a line like at a Chinese factory outlet type of parking lot. Careless people. People who seem to park by touch parking, where they bang their bumper into your car. So I don't want to have a new car for that reason, but there are plenty of others. Another reason is how much value that car loses the minute the ownership is transferred to you. So you don't even have to drive it off the parking lot. People would say, you lose 30% just driving off the parking lot. You lose 30% just by titling it. So now it has a new owner. Even though the owner hasn't driven it, it's still lost value because now it's a used car. So I buy used cars. And I buy them for about what the first owner would pay in sales tax. So, for example, if you buy a car for $40,000, here in Missouri, you'll pay about 8% sales tax. I seem to be able to buy cars for about 8% of what the first owner paid for them brand new. So that guy pays for the car, plus he pays the sales tax on the car, plus the delivery fees and all that. And I end up buying the car for what he paid for sales tax or even less. And I like doing that. And then I'm not so worried about those, dings and dents because it already has them. And a few more aren't going to make a big difference to me. And it's going to get them. It's going to get them just by people who drive these trucks on the road and they drop rocks off the bottom of the trucks, and they crack your windshields, that kind of stuff. Cracking the mirrors, cracking the grills, dinging the paint, chipping the paint. I don't want that to happen. So I buy the cars with that already pre-installed, if you will. And it works for me. So let me share with you a couple of the vehicles that I bought. I bought a 2004 Chevy work truck. Now, a work truck is the basic truck. It has a few amenities. It has air conditioning. But I think that's about it. Power steering and air conditioning and power brakes. But it has crank-up windows. So I don't have to worry about the window motor breaking, failing. And that happens. Or the window switches. Or the wires between the body of the car and the front of the door that you open. Because that's where all the wiring is. So opening and closing the door causes those wires to fail over time. That's a problem. Diagnosing these problems with electrical gremlins is just a nuisance. So if you have crank-up windows, that's not an issue. I try to avoid, all the luxuries, like seats that go up, down, left, right, all that, because those are driven by motors. And what happens is sometimes they stop working. And when they stop working, you can't move the seat. So wherever it was when the last person moved it, that's where it is now. Now, you may be shorter, taller, wider, thinner. You can't move the seat. And I'm sure you can bring it to someone and have it fixed. Or in my case, I would fix it myself. And in many of your cases, you could fix it yourself. But it's an extra expense. A huge expense. You can cost $600 or more to have your seat fixed because the motor and computer system that drives the motor doesn't work. Because computer system, yeah. Hard to believe, right? Well, in a Mercedes, you can have 3 positions. You can have it set for position number 1. That could be the father. Position number 2 could be the mother, or vice versa. Or position number 3 might be the son or the daughter. Okay? So it has to, in order to push a button and have it remember where the seat needs to be, based on where it was last set and programmed, there's a computer to do that. Do you really need a computer for your car seat? Do you really need to get a back rub while you're driving your car? And there are cars that have this. There are cars that you push the button and it changes the dimensions of the seat. You want more arch in your back, less arch in your back, harder, softer? Yeah. So for me, I don't really need that. I just want a truck that works. So I bought a 4.3 liter V6 full-size Chevrolet pickup truck with a full bed. Okay? Plate. It's white. Well, it's sort of white. It's mostly rusty. Rust-colored and white. The rocker panels have rusted out. The wheel wells in the bed have rusted. So it's rust-colored and white. And it has no rugs. It has we'll call it a rubber mat. It's probably a vinyl material, but they used to call them rubber mats, where carpeting would be in most vehicles. So I can hose it out if I want. If I have mud on my shoes, it doesn't get into the carpeting, I just hose it out. So it's a basic transportation vehicle. It starts right up, gets me where I want to go, doesn't cause me any problems. It's one of the best vehicles I've ever bought, but it's plain. Nothing fancy. No sliding rear window that leaks. Nope. It doesn't even have the dark tinted glass. It's just got, just a light tint, kind of a greenish tint. $3,000. And when I registered it, I paid tax on $3,000. Not $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, which trucks can cost today. So that was another savings. And by being an old vehicle, the insurance is way less. Way less. So I can insure that thing for, I don't know, maybe $300 a year with a lot of coverage. That's another thing you might want to think about. Insurance coverage. Some people don't want to pay a lot for deductible. So, for example, if that stone hits your windshield, you call up and you have like a $50 deductible. But you pay a lot more for a $50 deductible on your insurance than you pay for a $500 deductible. A lot more. And how many times do your windshields get taken out? And here's another thing. How much does a windshield cost? Well, we have a Jeep here on the farm, and the windshield was cracked when we bought it. How much does a windshield cost? Well, I bought one. It's just a flat piece of glass. It's nothing special. It's not even curved. Has a green tint. That piece of glass was $75. Now, if I want it installed, it's $100 total. Total. So why would I want to have insurance for my front windshield or windshield breaking when the windshield might cost $100? Well, there are windshields that cost more than that. So, for example, a Chevy pickup truck might cost $235 or $250 for that piece of glass installed. There was a guy who was mowing a lawn at a commercial location, and he was racing around with one of those zero-turn mowers, and he was having a lot of fun because it seemed like he was on piecework. It seemed like he was getting paid by the number of lawns he did. And he was just racing. I didn't care about much. And he kicked up a stone and took out the back windshield. Yeah, it's called a windshield even in the back on my 1996 Mercedes. Broke the windshield. Actually shattered the whole thing in like a million pieces. And I'm not exaggerating. Little tiny pieces the size of a number 2 pencil eraser. Millions of them. Well, I opened the door and the whole windshield caved in and landed on the back seat of the car just from the vacuum of opening the window. I'm sorry, of opening the door. And that was a pretty hard piece of glass to find. It's a 1996, so it's pretty old. Not everybody breaks the back window. You know, the windshields, that's common. Well, that was $275. I didn't pay for it. The company that mowed the lawn paid for it. $275 for that piece of glass. So what I'm trying to share with you is, you may think that the glass on a car costs way more than it does. And so you can save some money by kind of self-insured. I guess that's the term that I would use. By paying a higher deductible insurance premium than for a lower deductible. We'll be right back. Just 3 of us in the studio today. Me and a couple of Colts. So I'm talking about things that I do to make life a little easier. And I'm talking about some of the things that I've written down as items to be included in the book, the preparedness book, the frugal living book. In that light, I was noticing that light bulbs, we have in our farmhouse, we have what's commonly known as can lights, C-A-N. Another term for that might be recess lighting. And so what I've done is I bought, hey, Joey, welcome.
Hey, good morning, Bill.
Hey, good morning. Hey, thanks for joining us. I was talking about some of the things that I'm including in the book that I'm writing about frugal living. And let me just continue on in that light for just a minute or two. So I've noticed that in these recessed lights, if you have incandescent bulbs, which we all used to use, they burned out really fast in the can lights because they got hotter. And so I experimented with those compact fluorescent lights, the curlicue lights, and put them in there, and, life expectancy 7 years. Well, that's a wish, okay? And they would burn out in about a year. I thought, what's going on? And it's the heat, because in these can lights, the heat is trapped inside the can, so the bulbs get hotter. Now, with compact fluorescent lights, which obviously are going away, but many of us still have some remaining, if you have a can light and you screw it in with the base upward, what happens is there's electronics in the base of that bulb. And the heat from the bulb travels upward and further heats up the base of the bulb, as compared to if the bulb were sideways or if you screwed it in with the base down. So the base runs hotter, and the air is trapped in there, and it gets warmer and warmer and warmer, and it causes those light bulbs to have a shorter life expectancy. So what I did was I bought a bunch of porcelain light bulb extensions. They're like 1.5 inches long. So it's got a screw-in part at one end and a receptacle for the bulb at the other end. So it just makes the bulb 1.5 inches taller. And that 1.5 inches gave more air to circulate around the base of the bulbs that were screwed in the can lights, and it doubled their life expectancy. But they cost about $2 a piece, and they have to be porcelain, because the Chinese ones that are plastic will melt. Absolutely will melt and fail. So don't buy them. They've got to be porcelain. And if you're thinking that you want to have a lifetime of extended bulb life, then you can buy these porcelain devices. And they work. So I just wanted to share that. Joey, your thoughts?
Well, what would happen if you just used the track light versus the incandescent, or the track wasn't?
Well, if you're talking about a track light, you mean a track light versus a can light?
Right, because now the bulb's exposed, it cools a lot faster. And I know for a long time the rage was, can light, nothing hangs out of the ceiling. And if you've got a shorter ceiling, I can see the track light's not so beneficial.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at the track light fixtures, they have holes in the top so that the heat can leave the can, right? Of the track light.
When you insulate it, then you get your pocket of heat.
Yep. So I don't have them. I don't have track lights in the house. But what I've noticed is that if you envelop your light bulb in heat, they fail faster. So even in the kitchen, we have these hanging fixtures that have one over the kitchen prep area, has two, I guess you'll call them, I don't know what you call them, shades, but they're glass. They're like a bowl upside down. And I even use these extensions in there so that the heat doesn't get trapped as much and the light bulbs last longer. We'll be right back with Joey in Michigan. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USA Prepares, totally unscripted today. Totally unscripted. We'll be right back. Joey's with us, and we're talking about frugality, and we're talking about things to make your life easier. And class, so just one word of caution about if you use these extensions on light bulbs. I'm talking about standard light bulbs. So if the bulb is upside down in a fixture, and it's compact fluorescent or LED or incandescent, it will last the least amount of time. Because it runs the hottest. If the bulb is horizontal, it will last way longer than if it's upside down. And it will last the longest if it's base down, glass up. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, and that if you're going to use any of these extensions, as I do, that you use porcelain extensions and do not use plastic extensions, because we're talking 200 degrees or more if the bulb is upside down. Okay. So, Joey, we were talking about, during the break, I mentioned the complexity of cars. And this week I said that I believe, in my opinion, that we have crossed the line where we can't handle the technology that we've created for ourselves. It is extremely difficult to live with our technology. For example, if you have salt on the roads, and if you decide that you are going to change your tire on the road, and if you have a spare tire, you might find out that the salt has, and if you have a pickup truck with one of those cranked down spare tires under the bed, you might find out that you can't get your tire down because the winch mechanism has rusted or seized in place. And even if you do get it down, you might find that your lug nuts are rusted in place. And even if you get the lug nuts loose, and if you have the tools to do it, and you'll need a breaker bar in many cases because the factory tool is not strong enough nor long enough to give you the leverage to remove the lug nuts from that guy who put them on with an impact gun improperly. And the lug nuts have seized in place. Even if you can get them off, you may not be able to get the wheel off the hub because it's rusted in place. Joey, have you seen that as well?
Every single time. In fact, right before Thanksgiving, a friend of mine calls. He says, "Hey, can you help me?" This is, "What's the problem?" He says, "I got a flat tire." So it's raining. We go there. Well, the ground's so wet, the little jack, and it's a Ford Ranger pickup truck on top of it, so it's not like it's a heavy-duty monster truck or anything. Well, first things first, the jack sunk right into the mud, so you couldn't jack the car up. We couldn't figure out how to get the crank down because there's a little hole behind the license plate, and I guess if you were ever going to plan on changing a tire, you should probably do it a dry run when you don't need to. But you're right, everything froze up. And when you say we've outdone our technology, or has our technology outdone us? And was it intentional by the technology or the creators of the technology to create an endless loop, a circle that you can't get out of? Because it's easy to get into it. And who doesn't like technology? Oh, my. Instant coffee, hot coffee, fresh coffee. Everything is so simple when it's working correctly. It's only when it breaks, when the computer program in your car breaks, and you need a new modulator or a brain. You know, like I had an excavator, and the machine wouldn't run, but it was only $2,700. Oh, but yeah, see, you got to scan it. So the guy had to come, and that was another $600 just to pull the thing out, put it in, and basically it was two bolts, a plug. But then he had to bring the notebook computer and rescan it. So all of a sudden, you know, you're almost at $4,500 when it was all said and done for about a 45-minute job. But the travel time, and it was just, that's that endless loop. Everything is great when it's working. You know, it's like when our grandparents came here. What did they bring? I mean, they didn't bring a computer because they didn't have them. They didn't bring a camera because they didn't have them. They basically brought the clothes on their back and probably all their worldly possessions that fit in one box. And how was it people like that, those people could create the world that we live in today? What's wrong with this picture? And the people that live in the world today, in my opinion, they're really not, they can't even get out of the mess they've created themselves. The mess meaning when they eat fast food, the results of eating the fast food, as Norm was talking about, that was the most interesting conversation we had with Norm on Monday when I called in. Just phenomenal. He says, well, yeah, when you're stressed, your body does this or it does that. When you eat garbage food, it causes your body to stress itself. And, you know, Norm was bragging that his telomeres are half of what his normal age is, or what it should be for his normal age. So we've created a paradox that I don't see how we're going to get out of. And I remember watching a series once called Revolution, where the power grid went out. And all the people that had Prius cars, they used them for greenhouses because they didn't run anymore because it was an electrical product. So really, there are certain places where you really need the technology in a life or death health instance. But most of the time, has your quality of life gotten better, or is it worse because of all this free technology that we've got? Well, how would you answer that, Vince?
Well, I think I think things have gotten worse. Now, let me give you an example. The Keurig K-Cup coffee maker. Okay. There are a lot of things I don't understand. And each day there are more things I don't understand. And this Keurig K-Cup coffee maker with its refillable supplies that are decorating our landfills, just unbelievable to me. So when I make a cup of coffee, and I did that I made a pot of coffee. We have an electric coffee maker. It's nothing special. It's one of those $20 ones that you can get at the Chinese factory outlet. It's been working for probably 6, 7, 8 years so far, still going okay. And what it requires that you get a coffee filter. So we have the unbleached coffee filters. They're about a penny a piece. And you have to open a can of coffee if you're going to use pre-ground coffee. And there's a measuring scoop that we have that actually comes with the coffee. And you measure out how much water you want. In our case, it's going to be typically 8 to 10 cups a day. And then you wash out the basket that comes with the coffee maker. You put in the filter. You measure out the amount of coffee. And for us, it's 1/2 scoop per cup. So 10 cups of water is 5 scoops. And you power it up, and maybe 6 minutes later you have coffee. But you can still have that coffee all day. Now, that is less expensive for 10 cups than it is for 1 K-cup from Keurig. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why people buy it because, the Keurig, I mean, because you're using these disposable coffee containers. The hot water goes through this thin plastic, never used before container. The hot water is dissolving the plastic. You get to drink that with your coffee unknowingly. And then you get to throw out this disposable K-cup. It costs way more than I pay for 10 cups of coffee. It makes no sense to me. Why would I want that? And then what happens when that breaks? And you have to buy specific refills for it. You can't just go and pick up 8 o'clock coffee in a can, or chock full of nuts coffee, or, God forbid, Folgers or Maxwell House in the plastic containers that don't last as long as the steel cans. Makes no sense, Joey.
Well,
my grandparents would laugh at if I had one of those Keurigs. If my grandparents were alive, they'd laugh at me. They'd say, "How dumb did you get? Why would you have that thing?" They had a percolator and a gas stove. They bought one percolator. No refillable anything. They'd wash it out every day. And it lasted at least 50 years. Well, it's longer than that because we still have them.
Well, let's go to the next question. What has changed in the coffee? And you're absolutely right. That Keurig, it was so fascinating. I had a nice woman checking out in front of me, and she had 5 boxes of those, and they were $8.15, $8.69 because I was watching it get rung up. So that was 5 times 8 was $40+ for her coffee. And then she bought little cups of yogurt with little crumbs of granola separate on the top, and those were only $2.99 for like a 6-ounce cup. And she only had about 15 of those at $3 a piece. And her bill was only $251. And she must have been a very, very important person that makes a lot of money and has very little time. So she needed all these fast, simple conveniences. Because when you're very important and you make lots of money, you have an entitlement. And you're entitled to all these luxuries. That's why you work so hard, is so you can have more free time and then somehow you have to work more, and then pretty soon the free time is used up, and pretty soon you have to make a lot more money because you have the free time to buy this new and improved toxic product. And my biggest fear out of the Keurig little cup is the plastic and what's in that little cup. Follow it up on the end.
Yeah, we'll be right back. Joey in Michigan's with us. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USA Prepares. And I guess the one word to describe what we're talking about is being overrun by stupidity and technology. Joey's with us. Joey in Michigan. Joey, last night Mrs. Finelli and I were watching the second, we'll call it, release of Survivors, a BBC series that you recommended. And I didn't get a chance to call you because I stayed up really late last night watching episode after episode after episode. Now, class, we talked about Survivors, the original series, 1975 through 1977, and it was a BBC television series about a pandemic. Well, the second release of it was supposedly not a remake. However, as far as I can tell, and I haven't watched the whole thing, I've only watched about a third of it, it seems like it's a remake. It's an updated remake. I'd like to hear your opinion about that, Joey. But it's about a pandemic. It's about this disease that wipes out 90% of us. It's called the European flu in the second series, which would be called, or the second version of it, which was 2008. It's called Survivors. It's a BBC production. And what I saw was what you were talking about. They had various characters in this series, and they are struggling with all kinds of horrible dangers in a world with no society, no police, no law, no rules. It's a free-for-all. And limited supplies. And they had some people from various backgrounds. And one guy who was the wealthy playboy, with the fast car and the easy life and lots of women attracted to him, was the most useless of the whole bunch. Would you agree with that, Joey? Because I haven't seen the whole thing.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? And it goes back to what I asked the question. If I come to you, you being anybody it is, why would you allow me to stay in your safety, your environment, if I can't produce? I mean, and nobody in this class, well, I shouldn't say nobody, I would say that probably 10% of the class listening, maybe more, realizes the importance of having value. I mean, 90% of our people today believe, hey, I'm here and I deserve it, I'm entitled and I should have. I don't believe that's a correct statement. You are entitled to whatever you are entitled to work for. And, I mean, I think that's even how the Bible puts it. You reap what you sow. So why would you think you should eat if somebody else sowed a crop and you didn't even want to partake in help growing or harvesting the crop? So what is different? You're growing a life right now, your personality, your knowledge base, and the time for the harvest of your crop, of what you've learned in life, might be a pandemic scenario. I'm not sure. I don't even know. All I can suggest is if you think you want to get to the other side, and even if you are fortunate enough to get to the other side, it doesn't mean that you might live to be 90 years old in a place and a time where there are no medicines, because it seems that the antibiotics are always the issue. But you're right, Vince. I mean, people, that series really depicts people, and, it changed all the people, because now society looks at different cultures of people as superheroes. It's a fantastic how Greg, the engineer, is a different color in this series, and he's just so smart. But what I found to be fascinating when I watched the special features at the end, they interviewed him, and he had no idea why he was driving a Land Rover. He had no idea why he had to go to the sports store and get all the camping equipment. So then he says, yeah, they took a tutor, and they taught me for 5 hours why I needed this. And then it made sense to him after it was explained to him, oh, you need a sleeping bag to keep warm, you needed this stove, you needed all this camping equipment. So you don't have these luxuries that you could just open a key and turn a lock and push a button. So, remember, it's always a television actor.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So what you're saying is that the hero in the story, the engineer in the story, in real life had no clue. No clue. He was portraying a guy in the series who was knowledgeable, but in reality, the actor in real life had no clue. We'll be right back. Joey's going to stay with us for the next hour, right after the top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I just learned that, Joey, family friend was a young gal, in her 30s, taking her mother to bingo. Because her mother liked playing bingo. Now, this is a bingo that you pay $8 a head to enter. So mom and daughter sitting side by side, and you don't win anything. So there's no prize. It's just bingo. And you don't get any money. You don't get any stuffed animals. You don't get any toasters. There's no prize whatsoever. But you pay $8 a head to go in. So it's just kind of, a group gathering where there's a lot of people. A lot of people. And so the daughter is playing side by side with mom. And the daughter gets up to go to the ladies' room for a break. Comes back and someone steals her bingo cards. Really? Amazing. How did we get to this point where we are that selfish? Any comments, Joey, before we go on to lug nuts?
What possibly could you imagine is going to happen when there's no food, there's no water, there's no warm place to sleep? If a subhuman person would be that selfish and greedy to steal something for the $8, and you don't even win a prize, you win an accomplishment? Ooh, bingo!
Yeah,
unbelievable.
That's it.
Truly,
it's just
truly unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, in the series that we were talking about, which is called Survivors, the 2008 BBC television series, there was a government employee, and for some reason, she becomes like the head of a group of people that have everything. They've got a wind farm, they've got solar power, they've got electricity, which no one else has. Okay, and they've got plenty of food, and they've got water. And you can even take a hot water bath and wash all of yourself at the same time. Okay, that is like an extreme luxury in this particular series.
Did you notice?
Yes.
Finish that, but remind me.
They caught, and there's maybe 15 of them, and they caught someone trying to steal something for survival. Not bingo cards, and I don't know what it is. But what they did was this government employee, they have a trial right then and there, outside, everybody's in a circle, guilty, bang, the government woman shoots the accused right in the head, kills her. Justice is swift.
Well, in my opinion, that woman was the dumbest person of the entire compound, and she spoke well, and she knew how to answer questions that made no sense, just like today's intellectual prizes. But she felt threatened that even the dumbest person that was surviving was smarter than her, so she knew right away she had to eliminate another threat. That was how I interpreted why she took swift justice, and to show other people, hey, you can't be stealing from us. And you're right. I forgot that part. It's an amazing thing. It's like the life insurance. There was a commercial for life insurance during the break. And it's so simple. Just the word life insurance. What does that mean? Are you going to leave your family prepared? You know, your grandparents, my grandparents prepared our parents, and our parents prepared us, and our grandparents were still in the loop because that's when family still associated with family. So our grandparents were preparing us. Your grandparents were preparing, you know, everybody was in the loop. And if you were very fortunate, you had a fourth person the grandparents could have a say in. And everybody, what did they always tell you as you were a little kid? You better eat that because we had nothing in the Depression. And your grandparents, you don't even know what the Depression was great compared to what they lived. So how, you know, it's kind of like animals. Animals teach their young how to prepare. They teach them how to hunt. I mean, that's just common law of nature, I think. I could be wrong. But now we've got this modern, high-tech society that everybody needs to learn how to prepare and get instructions from, I forget, what do you call that place? Facebook or Twitter? That's the best place to get all your knowledge because they will prepare you to be dumber and dumber and dumber.
When, as you were talking about grandparents, I was thinking about my grandfather back in the early 1960s. And we were in his driveway, and he had the jack, and he put blocks behind the wheels of his car. So it was a flat driveway, okay? But he knew that you'd put a block of wood behind the wheel, in front of the wheel, so the vehicle wouldn't roll forward or backward, even though it was level, even though it had an emergency brake. And that's what they called them back then. They didn't call them parking brakes. They called them emergency brakes because that's what they were. They were for an emergency. If your brakes failed, you would deploy the emergency brake, whether it be a lever or a handle you pull. Well, it was mechanical, and it didn't rely on hydraulics that would fail. So we were preparing to rotate the tires, which means you take a tire off the left front and you put it on the right rear, and you rotate them in a cross pattern, or if you have a spare tire, you would deploy the spare tire, which is when you bought a new car, all the tires would be the same brand, same everything, and you would get 25% more wear because you'd be using another tire, or 20% more wear. And so we were rotating his tires, something that you never see people do today, never. And he put some grease on each of the studs and the face of the lug nuts when he put them on. And he said this will make it easier to take off the next time. So not only was he doing what was required, rotating the tires to have even wear and have your tires last longer, but he was preparing to make it easier to take the lug nuts off so they wouldn't rust the next time he was going to do it, because he expected to do it again and again and again and again. And also the lug nuts last longer when you do that, and so do the studs. But who thinks about that today? And that's what he taught me. And I was very young when he taught me that. And then he taught me something else. We were trimming some bushes, and saplings. And he had these loppers. These are like long-handled pruning type devices. And he would say, Vinny, don't cut it straight across. Cut on a diagonal. It's way easier. Watch. Try it straight across, then try cutting on a diagonal. He's absolutely right. I don't even think of cutting straight across anymore. It doesn't make any sense to me to fight and put extra strain and wear and tear on the loppers when I can make it easier on everybody, the tool and me, by doing it my grandfather's way. But who taught anybody today that that's how you do it? Joey, your comments?
Well, Vince, in fairness to that, because, we had the same growing up experiences. But in today's world, how many different sets of grandparents does an average family go through? I mean, there's people that have been married 3 and 4 times. And if they keep all those grandparents in the loop, and most of the grandparents today, I don't even know what they're capable of doing because, most people that have 4 different marriages in today's world, their parents probably had at least 1 or more marriages. So those products of those families, they did what they learned. I mean, I was fortunate. My mom and dad, they were together, and my dad died, and then my mom was on her own. And, it's like when your mom passed or your dad passed away, your mom was for another how many years. And she was really, really lucky that she had you in her life, and it was give and take because you were still learning from her, and she was still sharing with you. And, the people don't have that today. So whose fault is that? It's not my fault. It isn't your fault. And I mean, you would think other people could at least look at a scenario and say, wow, look at that family. They all get together and they do this or they do that. I mean, my family is non-existent in today's world. My relatives, they're all older than I am, cousins. They're starting to get sick and die off. The ones that are still here, we don't talk. And it's okay. I mean, because I found a new family, people I have more in common with. A lot of people I have more in common with. And I mean, one thing I feel bad is when I'm trying to explain to somebody, there's a possibility there might not be an economy like we've had for the last 20 or 30 or a lifetime. It might not be in the future because you just can't keep spending money and think, and they don't understand why. So why waste your time? Why not find people and share with those that have a common goal? That's your family of instructors at USA Prepares. Most all of us have a lot more in common than we do with our own family because we all see the direction and the light at the end of the tunnel. The other people, they're distracted, and it's important to be distracted. And a lot of people today, they deserve it. Like that lady with that Keurig coffee filter. I've been buying green coffee beans, and I did it for two reasons. I was reading you could vacuum seal coffee beans the last 25 years. If you take a roasted, not roasted ground coffee, a roasted coffee bean, 17 months, regular coffee in a can, 17 months, but a green bean, 25 years. So, the way the weather's constantly changing, I bought I buy? An 80-pound bag of coffee beans. It was $2 plus a pound, and now I'm tweaking the fine-tuning, figuring out how to roast beans. Well, let me tell you, they don't roast so good when it's 32 degrees if you do it outside because they smell, but at 45 degrees, they roast a lot better. So there's the incidentals with the bean, but we'll finish that on the way back.
Yeah. Joey's with us. We're sharing real preparedness. The ways you should be thinking about things in your world. We'll be right back. Class, Joey's with us. Joey's live in Michigan. Joey, you were talking about coffee. You bought green beans, and you're roasting them yourself, and you're doing that why?
Well, I'm doing that for three reasons. First of all, I have to question what they put in coffee today. Because what's one thing everybody takes for granted that's, anything you buy in a store you take for granted is healthy. And then when I seen that Heinz and somebody else has just bought the blue can, that really scared me because I used to buy that one coffee called U-Ban. And U-Ban was a subsidiary of Maxwell House. But now I see U-Ban has a different name. It's based out of Chicago before it was out of California. And Maxwell House is now Heinz and somebody else. Procter & Gamble maybe, I'm not sure. All I know is, okay, that tells me that I'm trying to buy organic, free trade, non-chemically infected coffee beans. Roasting them, there's plenty of internets, there's sites, and simple things. I mean, you can use a popcorn popper and roast it on a wood stove. You can roast it in a cast iron frying pan on a wood stove. Not me, but you can use an electric popcorn popper. I bought at the junk store a Baby George rotisserie with a little round basket, and you throw a pound of beans in. When it's warm out, you should be able to do it in 17 minutes. It's taken me a lot longer. It's taken closer to a half an hour. but it still comes out, and then you have to let that rest for 2 days. So the CO2 breaks down off of the bean from roasting it. And it's a good learning curve. And I'm always adjusting it. But that's how I want to do things. And, you know, as soon as I figure out how to roast the coffee, I'll go on to the next thing. And coffee's probably never going to be cheaper today, because if you have an ice storm next year and the coffee crop's damaged, maybe it'll cost twice as much. So why not buy the 80 pounds, put them in little bags, and then break them out when you need them? I mean, it's little bits and pieces that people don't want to think about. And, you know, I'm not giving up on society. I mean, but I am looking for better ways. I've been looking for purple sweet potatoes. Well, all of a sudden, a sweet potato, if you buy 3 sips, that's the little rip product that you grow. Well, 3 sips are $12.95. Well, the chain of grocery stores in my area was carrying a purple sweet potato for $1.99 a pound. So I'm like, well, geez, I'll just buy the potato, start germinating it, get the little buds that start to grow on it, and voila, sweet potato sips. Well, all of a sudden, the purple sweet potato's gone. I happen to notice, looking for the sweet potatoes, that the chain of stores in my area has eliminated 1/3 of they have an area where there's potatoes and onions. Now it's 1/3 smaller. And they put a rack to take up the space. But I'm noticing the produce in the stores, there's a lot less of it. And the quality of it is a lot less desirable. The cucumbers are smaller. The lettuce is smaller. The cabbage heads are smaller. You know, always, you can go to Aldi's and you always knew you're going to get the best produce for the best price. Now, you can get a 6-inch cucumber there for 49 cents. You can go to the competition and get a 10 or 8 or 10-inch cucumber, it's like twice the cucumber for the same money. So Aldi's is now piggybacking off of what, when they started, they were giving you everything, just like everybody does. They got you in the door. Now, all of a sudden, they've raised all their prices. Did they raise their prices because they wanted to, or did they raise their prices because of this so-called mini ice age and the weather patterns that are changing and the lack of food stuff? I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I listen to two, I find them to be very knowledgeable, Adapt 2030 and Ice Age Farmer. And they both claim, based on weather reports from around the world, and they've got a lot of Europe's weather and South America's weather, and if you only seen if they think we had snowstorms, I mean, our friend in Germany area, they've had 7 feet of snow, and they normally don't get 7 feet of snow, and the state had to come in, the military, to start cleaning roads because they had so much, they were paralyzed. So what's really going on?
You're not exaggerating. I have a picture from the area near Germany of snow up covering the first story of a house. That's what we're talking about, class. We'll be right back. Joey's with us. Joey, earlier in the broadcast, you mentioned the word family. And that struck a note with me. And I'll tell you why. Back in the 1990s, like from 1989 through the 2000s, we had a computer manufacturing business in Virginia. And people would come and they would buy their computers from us. We didn't advertise. Our phone number, our corporate phone number, was not even listed in the phone book. Yeah, we had phone books back then. And we had this building on our farm where we manufactured computers, and people would just come and they'd order them, and either they would build them, we'd teach them how to do it, or we'd build them for them. And so we got a chance to spend more time with our customers than you would typically find going into a big box store and saying, you need this computer and taking it through the checkout. So what we found was that, and people would just tell us these things. I don't know why, but they did. And we heard stories that we just couldn't believe. For example, why people would say to me, "You guys work together all the time, you and Mrs. Finelli?" And I say, "Sure." And they'd say, "How can you stand each other all that time together?" Gosh. They'd say, like my husband and I, boy, we'd be killing each other. Then they'd say things like they would take separate vacations, and they would have separate checking accounts. She'd have her money, and he'd have his money. I couldn't believe it. Separate checking accounts. And they would buy things without telling their spouse. Well, heck, it's their money. So they would say, well, it's not like money they put in a pot like we do. Like our family, it's the family's money. It's not mine. It's not Mrs. Finelli's. It's ours. Both of us worked really hard to get to this point. And so it's our money. And I wouldn't dare buy a gallon of paint without checking with Mrs. Finelli. Is it because I'm afraid I'm going to get beat up? No, because it's not fair. It's her money too. And I wouldn't spend that money, and I wouldn't pick a color because it's our house. It's not mine. It's ours. And people buy things, they're married, without consulting with the other half. It's bizarre. It's nuts. It's unacceptable in my world. But I think my world is different, Joey, from the general public's world. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, you're still living in the old world. And, the old world was fun. There was trust. There was camaraderie. It was exciting. I mean, I remember when I was younger, how when I knew we were going to have a family reunion, I couldn't wait. I just couldn't wait to go see the rest of my family, my cousins, that was better than going to Disney World. Today, there's a handful of them, and those that I enjoy talking to, I call them every week. They're older than I am, and I call them because they're not going to be here. And I was talking to one the other day, and he says, yeah, I talked to so-and-so, and he was telling me how he cooked dinner. And I says, yeah. I says, let me guess. And I ran through it. I said, I already heard the story, and I already listened to you, and I let him tell me the story. I said, and you know why I listened to the story? Because someday I'm not going to be here to listen, or you're not going to be here to tell me. Or someday I'm going to want to tell the story, and I want somebody to listen to my story. So, those days are becoming numbered. And who thinks like that? I mean, think about, today is Wednesday. Now, today the weather is 30, says it's 36 degrees. We were supposed to have an ice storm last night and all day. Last Wednesday, the high was 0 or 1 below 0. Now, tomorrow's going to be 47 degrees here, and yet 19 degrees at night. So I don't know what's going on. I've not ever seen from a week you could have 15 inches of snow on the ground, and it rained like a thunderstorm last night for at least 3 hours. If you're thinking that that's not normal weather patterns, then you might also be thinking that if everything you're accustomed to doing in your life might change, why would you not want to, what's that word? Prepare? I don't know what people think. And you and I, when we talk, sometimes we question, are we from a different place? Because we'll go to a grocery store and we'll watch barbaric acts of stupidity. I mean, just simpleness. I mean, you'll tell the same story, or you'll be telling me a story, and I'm laughing because it happened to me that same day, 3 hours different. So I don't know how our energies are attracting. I mean, and I know there are people listening, and they have the same thing. And there's other people, they might just say, that's ridiculous. And I'm not saying it isn't ridiculous. I just know it happened in my world. I know what happens in your world when we share the stories, because it's like, really? So how would people think that it could be 0 last week and be 36 degrees today and it rains, and nobody would think there's something wrong, that there could be a potential. And when I listen to that other goofy guy called the DAP 2030 or Ice Age Farmer, and they're promoting a solar minimum, like Rick Miller would be talking about, the day after tomorrow Ice Age, people, you better wake up, because the fat lady's going to sing, and she's getting dressed, and it's going to be like a full-blown opera, and it's going to be one of the finest. And if it doesn't happen, well, you're okay. But if it does happen, and you're what's that called? A pound wise, penny foolish. How do you say that?
Penny wise,
and
pound foolish. A stitch in time saves 9. Right? Yeah.
Well, I'm dyslexic, so I get them words backwards. That's why sometimes I have to ask. But the point of the story is, I get the picture, and I can see pictures other people don't see, and I connect dots better than most people. So the weather pattern should scare everybody, and if it hasn't, then they better take some more happy pills. And food should be the next most important thing somebody should be thinking about, not necessarily even about buying it, how to grow it, because if you have actively been growing gardens, you will know a garden doesn't grow today like it did even 4 or 5 years ago. And if you are growing heirloom seeds, some will grow, but some won't grow. And they did just what Monsanto's plan was, pollute the soils from what's coming down in the rain so that the seeds won't grow. And you need a particular seed that will grow better in a prepared soil with the aluminum, the stasium, all the good stuff that's being chemtrailed.
Joey, I didn't know you were dyslexic.
I see. When I dial a phone number, the last 4 digits, the last 2, I always dial wrong. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? And then it's like, oh, dopey me.
I sometimes I have this saying when I dial a phone number, and I say, I'm really sorry, but you know what? I meet some of the nicest people by misdialing phone numbers, and I really do. And I didn't know you were dyslexic, because I am too. And when I was in elementary school, maybe that's why we get along so well. When I was in elementary school, they thought I was retarded. I mean, really, they thought I need to be on the short bus. I need to be in those small classrooms with rubber rooms. And when I was in high school, they thought I'd never make. First of all, they thought I'd never make it through elementary school. Then they thought I'd never make it through high school. They wanted to put me in special ed, short bus stuff, and then they thought I'd never make it through college. Then they thought I'd never make it through my master's degree. And I'm dyslexic. There's no question about it. But you slowly grow out of it. But you have to read. And when you're dyslexic, it's hard to read because the words keep jumping around. It's a moving target. It's not. And I remember I met Mrs. Finelli in 4th grade, and she could read so well. I was so envious. Wow, here's this really pretty girl, and she could really read well. And for me, I had to put a blue or pink slip of paper under each line so the lines wouldn't be moving around and the words wouldn't be jumping around. But by the way, Joey, I'm pretty sure you're aware of this, but people who are dyslexic are really bright in other areas. You know that, right?
I know that, and that's why I have really good common sense, because I look at stuff as it is, not as other people want to think it is. Like I said with the weather. And I don't look at any situation in my life that was a hardship. I look at it as I'm very fortunate things happen to me, because it's almost like my Creator is pushing me. I'm being herded, like a cattle dog herds sheep. Well, things come up, and I don't care. You ever notice when you wanted to buy a tractor, and you know you wanted that tractor, and you're all excited to buy it, and then you're all set to leave, hey, I just sold it. You're like, what? Told you I wanted that tractor. And you don't even want to talk to that guy again, and then 3 days later, another tractor comes up, and it's even better than the one you were looking at, and it's actually cheaper. So you can't argue with those natural laws of, I mean, I look at that as affirmations. They show you when you really think you want something, you maybe necessarily you weren't supposed to get it. But you and I have been put on the same path, you and I and a lot of the other instructors, and I will guarantee you a lot of the other instructors are dyslexic. That's why they see stuff outside of the box. That's why a group of us.
I think you just hit the nail right on the head. And that happens to me, not all the time, but it happens a lot with tractors and properties. We wanted to buy a farm the same size, and I couldn't believe it. We came to see it. We were going to buy it. Everything was good, handshake ready to go. And then the seller decides not to sell it. I couldn't believe it. Mrs. Finelli said, "Oh, there'll be a better one. Don't worry." And there was. Joey, you said something very important. Actually, you said almost a couple hours worth of very important things. But about a decade and a half ago, Mrs. Finelli and I were looking to buy a farm in this area where we are in Missouri. And there was 240 acres for sale, and we talked to the seller. And actually, it was three children who inherited the property. And they had all decided to sell it. They agreed on the selling price. We agreed to pay their asking price. And it was adjacent to a park, a state park. And people would say, wow, you have all that land. You don't even have to pay for it. And you can, use the state land. And boy, that's awesome. Well, the deal fell through because one of the three children changed their mind. Now, I'm not talking about young children. I'm talking about adult children, like my age. And they agreed, and then they changed their mind, which to me is unacceptable. But that's what they did. And actually, I'm glad they did. And Mrs. Finelli said, well, it's okay. There's something better coming along. And 241 acres is the size of the farm we bought, probably 50 miles away from that one. Way better, way better. It has more features, more buildings, more ponds, a stream. I mean, it's way better. Okay? But here's something that I wanted to bring to light. So living next to a state park, those jerks in the government corporation who run the state park, they burn the debris under the trees. And when they do, it's like a wildfire in California. You get smoked out. So you live near those jerks, and they burn you out with the smoke. And you've got to leave because you can't breathe. They don't care about the surrounding village. They're in charge. They're the government corporation. And what happens is their fires get out of control, and they burn the forest of the neighboring farms. And what are you going to do about it? Not too much. So Mrs. Finelli was right when she said, oh, that means something better is going to come along. That's what you've been saying, Joey. You're absolutely right. And one other thing I'd like to say, marriage. Marriage, if you're married, you have an obligation to communicate with each other. You have an obligation to make decisions together. You have an obligation to eat together. You have an obligation to plan together. Otherwise, you are disrespectful of your other half. Any comments on what I've said, Joey?
No, you're very accurate. And if I had one wish, I would wish that your class that's listening, they would be more vocal. They would call in more. They would share their experiences. When I went to your 4th of July thing, and then I went to your roundup with that group of the intellectuals you would waste your time with every week, and then you made me and Grace Thorne get up and talk to your crowd, I was going to leave because I don't want to talk in front of a crowd. I don't want to talk, period. And, you've asked me hundreds of times before I ever agreed to come on your show. And I did it because you asked me, not because I want to. But you know what? If I can help one or two people, if they realize whether it's they're dyslexic, whether they had an idea that I just said, well, they've got, and I know there's a lot of people that got better ideas than me, and I'd want to hear from them. You've sent SOSs out to help build an iron Edison battery, how to build a free energy source, how to do all kinds of wonderful things. And why is it everybody's so reluctant? And they can call in and they can tell them they're Peter Potamus. They can tell them they're Wilbur from Wyoming. They can tell them they're Clyde from Cleveland. Nobody cares who you are and where you're at. Just share your story and make a difference. And know there are others like you out there that we hold a key to our existence. We hold, they're destroying, they are whatever it is. Whoever creates the AI system, whoever's creating this digital scenario we're living in, we went from analog to digital, now we have no time. We have all the luxuries life could want, and yet we can't accomplish anything. If I had one wish, is that other listeners would call in, and they would share their experiences and help us become who we are and what we're supposed to become. How do you feel about that?
I love it. I love it, and I agree. I absolutely agree. Class, that's what we are. That's who we are. We share our stories. We tell stories, real-life situations about what happened, who was involved, the outcome, and how it can be different, how it can be better. That's who we are at USA Preparedness.
And no part of this was rehearsed.
No part. No part of it was rehearsed. Joey didn't even know he was going to be on the air today. Joey, thanks so much for being with us.